Hey there, welcome to week 28 of Jackie on Keto. I heard a great sentence last week on one of the podcasts that I listened to by Sandra Toll, and she said, "It's not about dying, we will all die. It's about the quality of life you have while you're living." I'm just going to say that again because it's really profound. It's not about dying, because we will all die. It's about the quality of life you have while you are living. And we're all told how much being overweight is such a problem, especially in today's environment. And we're eating too much sugar and too many white carbs. We don't move enough. And they're telling us this, even though the calories in, calories out, so how much you eat and how much you move, doesn't have a huge relevance, we're still getting fed that way of thinking. But we're told that sugar's bad for you. We're told not to eat white carbs and to eat brown carbs. But we just don't realise how much of a killer that sugar and those carbohydrates which revert to sugar are. And it doesn't just affect overweight people. Thin people can be just as sick and have just as much problems from the too much consumption of sugar and carbohydrate. And it's not that we don't want to change, because I'm sure a lot of us do, but these carbs and sugar are so addictive and we don't realise it, and it's only once it's out of your system that you can feel that addiction lift in a way, and that you don't feel that you have to eat and you have to have carbohydrates and you have to have bread or potatoes or rice or whatever it is that you normally eat. It's only once that craving has gone and that addiction has gone that you start to realise that it's so much easier. So one of the key things to understand is when we eat too much sugar in the form of carbohydrates and sugar, the body has to do something with it. And if we eat more than we use up, then it has to store it somewhere. So it stores it as fat. And it's normally around the midsection of your body, around the organs is where it gets put, and also around other parts of the body, behind your eyes, all sorts of places that can cause lots of problems later on. And another thing that happens, even though you've got high levels of insulin, it can't always get to the brain. There becomes a barrier that it can't get through. And so the sugar or glucose isn't getting to the brain cells. And the brain cells are dying, and especially the ones in the hippocampus, which is where our memories are stored. And this is part of the reason why we're seeing so much dementia and Alzheimer's nowadays. So there are lots of health problems that happen over time that we don't realise when we're just carrying on our normal life. So it is really worth taking that step to low carb and higher fat, even if you're not going to get into nutritional ketosis. So low carb, high fat is similar to ketosis, but it's not the same. So you are lowering your carbs and keeping them much lower, but not to enough proportion to get into nutritional ketosis. And to get into nutritional ketosis, you have to have less, you have to use up all your glucose, all your glycogen stores before you can start burning fat. And that is the difference between low carb, high fat and ketosis or ketogenic way of eating. Is when you're in a ketogenic way of eating, you're actually burning up the fat and using the fat as fuel rather than the glucose. So that was really interesting, and really want to encourage so many people to take that step to lower those carbs, because it is a silent killer. So this week on my ketosis diet, keto diet, I made some more ice cream. Doesn't taste like ice cream. I'm not a great vanilla fan anyway. It doesn't taste like ice cream as we know it, but it's quite nice, and it is a good dessert. So I've had that once. I think only once this week, but I had one in the afternoon just as a taste once it had frozen, and then I had it again last night. So yeah, it's a good little dessert, and I sprinkle some chopped nuts on top, and it does do that. Take away that need for something sweet. Also this week I made some fat bombs, which I keep in the freezer, and I have them occasionally. And last week, as I told you in last week's video, last Saturday for lunch I had a couple of bagels with smoked salmon, and I told you that my blood sugar went from 5.1 or something like that to 7.2, and my blood ketones dropped from 1.9 to 0.3. But by Sunday at 1 o'clock, my ketones were back up to 2 and my blood sugar was down to 4.8. However, the weight that I put on overnight on Saturday, even though it probably wasn't fat, it was probably just fluid, didn't come back right off until Friday, yesterday morning. So it took Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 days for it to get back to where it was this time last week. So this week I did another 24-hour fast. Now, it wasn't intentional. I had planned on having some bone broth on Thursday evening, but my kids were all over the place and I had to pick them up. We got stuck in traffic and I didn't get back in time to have my broth before I went to taekwondo. So I didn't have anything. Once I get through to the next morning, I'm then fine getting through to lunchtime. So I went from Thursday lunch till Friday lunch. And I find that quite easy, especially if I'm not home when everyone's having supper. That's quite easy. So this coming week, I'm doing another keto talk. I'm going to do it exactly the same as I did last time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure the more I do it, the easier it will get. So let's go over and see my weigh-in. Okay, so you're going to see my toe is wrapped up. I'll tell you about that after. And the weight is 13.5.8. So my starting weight in June 2017 was 231.8 pounds. Last Saturday I was 188 pounds. And this Saturday, even though I'd put on quite a few pounds in the week, I was back down to 187.8. So that's a loss of 0.2 pounds in the week, 16 pounds since week 1, and an overall loss of 44 pounds. So I'm really pleased with that. 13 stone 5 is great. And as you probably saw in the video of my weight, I had my toe all strapped up. I was at taekwondo on Thursday and we were doing some sparring and I kicked someone and I don't know what happened to my toe, but I definitely did it damage. I don't know if I bent it that way or if I bent it backwards, but I definitely damaged my toe. So I spent yesterday morning at the walk-in centre having it checked and x-rayed, and they don't think it's broken, but I've got it all strapped up and I've got this huge funny shoe to walk around in to keep it stable, really. But no exercise for the moment, and I only did my run once last week because I was going to do Friday, yesterday and tomorrow, and I'm stuffed. I can't do it. So let's see. I hope I get back into it. So Monday was measuring day, and I measure in 27 different places, including around my arms, various places on my body, 3 places on my thighs, my knees, my calves, my ankles, all along. And last month at the beginning of September, my measures hadn't changed very much. In fact, they'd gone up about an inch. But this month, if you add up all the scores from last month and all the scores from this month, I dropped 26, just over 26 inches. That's huge. So some places stayed the same, a couple of places went up, and the biggest losses were around my bust and underneath, round my back and my thighs. And so that's where some of the bigger losses came, but just overall I think the general trend is down. So that was really good. I was pleased about that. I've noticed on my bra straps I've had to put it on a lower clip, so I had been noticing that, and I'd also noticed there's a tiny little gap between one little section of my thighs when you stand, and you can just see a tiny bit of light through it, which is something I don't think I've ever seen. So I'm soon going to have to buy some new bras, but I want to wait a little bit just to get down a bit further, if I'm going to get down further, but there we go. So I'm not setting myself any challenge for this week particularly, just to remain in ketosis. I have been testing fairly regularly, and even last night I checked after my dinner, so it was a couple of hours after dinner, and I was still in ketosis, although they say ketosis is 0.5 to about 3.0 in ketones, and I was down to 0.7. I have been a lot higher when I've tested before eating, so I don't always test after I've eaten. So it's still in nutritional ketosis, so I'm happy with that. So no real challenges. I can't do any exercise for the week. I'm just going to take it easy. I've got to sit with my leg up and rest it. So that's all for this week. As I said last week, I've just started a Instagram page called Jackie On Keto. So come and follow me there. I'm sometimes posting some foods and little tidbits of information as I come across them. So that's all for this week. See you next week.